So Doshin, thank you for taking the time today. I want to ask you a couple of questions really about your teachings and about what you're bringing to the world, which is so unique and so unusual, especially for myself as a student. I'm fascinated. And the thing that's really hit me from your recent shadow course is it's kind of like the pearl of your teachings, the marriage of three major bodies of knowledge in the world. Well, two are bodies of knowledge and one is a body of no knowledge, I suppose. But really, it's a mixture of Jungian psychology, Jungian philosophy with integral theory, and then the absolute depth of clarity and no mind that you bring from being a Zen Roshi. And I'm really intrigued, why are those three things? Why do we need all three? Why can't we just have emptiness and Zen mind? Why do we need the rest?
That's an excellent question. And it's a question that's so prominent in this modern day and age. I think Einstein said it best. Einstein said, knowledge without religion is blind, and religion without knowledge is lame. So if we don't believe in some intelligence greater than our own ego, we are hobbled and our life is impoverished. And if we just have blind faith, blind belief, our life is hobbled. We must have direct experience of the intelligence that's greater than we are. We must also have an understanding of the relative world in which we live that is the most evolved, the least lame understanding of the world, both interior and exterior, that is available to us. These two ingredients are crucial. We need knowledge and we need insight. We need overstanding and we need understanding. We need an overstanding of the relative world we live in and an understanding of the deepest truth of who we are. This marriage of insight and knowledge will revitalize our lives. This is what I do when I marry the depth psychology of Carl Jung, the integral theory of Ken Wilber, and Zen insight and practices. This gives us the best, most evolutionary, deepest understanding of ourselves and the world in which we live, and the clearest insight into the intelligence that underlies our superficial personalities and conditioning. This is what we're bringing in Integral Zen.
Thank you.
The tradition and lineage of Zen, the brilliance of integral theory, united in the crazy Roshi who learned Carl Jung's depth psychology and integrated these things together. Come see for yourself how effective this is.
It certainly has been for me. It really has been. It's really been transformative. And one thing that's still kind of unclear to me personally, I know there's been 3 turnings of the Buddhist wheel so far, and you were involved in a conference around the 4th turning of the Buddhist wheel. So how does the integral theory and the Jungian perspective really relate to this 4th turning of the Buddhist wheel? And maybe give a very brief outline what the first 3 turnings were, so we can kind of understand the progression that's going on here.
Yes. So Buddhism is an interesting study in the history of a religion. Buddhism has gone through 3 major revisions and evolutionary advancements. Now, let's just pause for a moment and consider, who am I? There is a relative conditioned me. We call it ego or personality. It's not a good thing to get rid of that ego. If I got rid of my conditioning, I wouldn't know how to drive. I wouldn't know how to cook dinner. I wouldn't know how to talk to you right now. So we're not trying to kill our conditioning or our ego. That's all our ego is just conditioned mind. Most people don't want to look at that. They don't want to even consider that as a possibility because they're so addicted to how important they are. It was no different for me. I was quite addicted to how important I was. When you become a Zen master, you have to let that go. It just kind of happens naturally. You get over yourself and you just start laughing at the ridiculousness of how seriously I took myself. It's just really amusing from here. So this ego, this conditioning, is the relative self. And the relative self, as it's grown and continues to evolve, it changes, it evolves. Now, the deepest truth of who I am, if I cut away all that conditioning, if I cut away all my thoughts, my feelings, my stories, all my precious stories, I'm so attached to my stories, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
If we let all that fall away, what is left is nothing. And nothing is not empty. People are terrified of emptiness. It reminds them of dying, of this precious ego that I'm so addicted and attached to. I don't want it to die. So I avoid emptiness at all costs until finally I stumble into the void and I realize that emptiness isn't empty. It's alive. It's awake. It's the awareness itself which underlies all of my conditioning, all of my thinking and feeling and precious stories. Underneath all of this is the deepest truth of who I am, which is pure, naked, silent, unconditioned, unpolluted awareness of awareness. So this never changes. This is the only thing that's real and stable. Pure, selfless awareness of awareness. This is eternal. Everything else changes. And this awareness isn't just underlying this body, it's underlying the whole universe. In fact, the whole physical universe and this awareness are not two. They're not one either. That's a koan. Who are you? The pure, naked awareness that permeates the whole universe. Who are you? So, this pure awareness that is unchanging, and this relative self that is still evolving and de evolving, does our true face, which is actually the unity of this relative conditioned mind and this timeless eternal awareness. The unity of these two things is our true face. Does our true face evolve? Well, yes, it does. Because the relative self evolves. So this brings us to the doctrine of two truths. There is an absolute ultimate truth of pure, selfless, naked awareness. And there is a relative truth, which is all of my individual and all of our collective cultural conditioning. So it is so important to awaken to the ultimate truth and to heal and make healthy the relative self. It is absolutely critical. And this is what we're doing.
Nice. And that is the fourth turning then? What you're speaking about right there is the next stage in Buddhist evolution? Because that's a very new concept. I've never heard that talked about in traditional Buddhism, whether it's Zen or Tibetan or Chan.
So in the first turning of Buddhism, which began long before the life of the Buddha, but really the first turning is the period of time from the Buddha's birth, 600 BCE, to about 200 CE. So this 800-year period is considered the first turning. When I was part of this event that you described, which is Ken Wilber's fourth turning of Buddhism, in which he invited three, and it came to be four Buddhist teachers who are using integral theory actually in their teachings. He described the first turning, this period of 800 years after the life of the Buddha, as the period of renunciation. What we're renouncing is our animal nature, our instinctual nature that's really driven by the negative emotions of greed, grabbing things, anger, pushing things away, indifference, which is really ignorance, not knowing how important things are, or just not caring, and pride, which is, I like to think of as cultural narcissism, because it's so prevalent in this postmodern age. I'm so proud of who I am. I'm so self-centered and narcissistic that I can't see anything greater than my own intelligence. This is something that really limits us. And jealousy, being so insanely jealous that we just shut down, and then other negative things happen, like violence or disconnection, which is just another form of violence. So by renouncing all these negative afflictions of human nature, we're able to live a more spiritual life, and we're able to begin to awaken a deeper awareness than our animal nature allows. The second turning of Buddhism, which began with Nagarjuna about 200 CE, is the age of transformation. We're transforming our contracted mind into our liberated mind. The age of transformation. And Nagarjuna brought a deeper, more articulated understanding of emptiness and the importance of emptiness. And this is what allowed the transformation. The other thing that emerged in this second turning of Buddhism was the Bodhisattva vow. Now it wasn't a selfish endeavor where I was just going to practice suppressing my animal nature and till I stumbled by accident into the emptiness and I awakened. Therefore, I didn't have to come back and be reborn and keep trying to complete the cycle. This is the Arhat, the age of Arhats. By the Bodhisattva vow entering, now someone on the path must first awaken, become an Arhat. But the reason they're awakening, because they deeply care and they want to keep coming back as an awakened being until every blade of grass, every human being and sentient being is awake. This is the second turning of Buddhism, transformational. Now, the third turning of Buddhism we add the path of pleasure to the path of pain. So, so now we're not just renouncing our animal nature, we're using it as a vehicle to awaken. Now, the problem with this one is it can be real addicting. If you're not working with an awakened person and really following their instructions, it's real easy to get addicted to pleasure. This was not the path that I chose because it would have taken me a very long time, many lifetimes, I expect, because I love pleasure. I don't like pain. So the second turning, we're using pain as a vehicle to awaken. The third turning, we're using pain and pleasure. An example would be Vajrayana Tibetan tantric teachings. This has been a little problematic in the West, where we don't quite understand the spiritual nature of pleasure. And it's so easy to get distracted by the pleasure before you really discover it for yourself. And we're a little skeptical of working with surrendering to gurus and enlightened teachers. And that's really an important part of this path. Now, the fourth turning of Buddhism, what in the world will it be? Nobody knows. Ken Wilber had the best articulation of anybody I've ever heard. And my whole life, as it turns out, has been an attempt to bring some kind of an integration of a more evolved religion, a union of psychological theory and Buddhist insight into my own experience. And what I found was what I was lacking was a philosophical context that included everything that humans have ever experienced. We needed a brief Zen-like theory of everything. And where I found that was Ken Wilber. That's what he's done. For the first time in human history, he's created a conceptual framework that includes everything and has a place for everything that humans have ever experienced and can potentially experience. So this, to me, is the marriage of the inner and the outer world. The inner world that's been explored extensively by Buddhism, and the outer world that's been explored by science, and the inner world that has, for the first time, begun to be explored, the reality of the whole psyche by Carl Jung. So Jung for the exploration of the inner world with his controversial encounter with the archetypes and the archetypal images, and Ken Wilber for his exquisite philosophical understanding of the whole inner and outer universe. And this makes possible a fourth turning of Buddhism that can be duplicated in many religions. The Religions of Tomorrow is a powerful book about this very topic. This is so timely and so important. And in a couple hundred years, we'll know what it looks like. In the meantime, we're all struggling as best we can with what is a fourth turning of Buddhism and what can that teach other religions, because we desperately need insight. Modern science is blind, and so are we. So that is the fourth journey of Buddhism, at least one attempt at it, which is our attempt. And it's measured. Our success, to me, is measured by the impact it has on the people who join our Sangha. And what we have that's unique in our Sangha is four things. We have an integral Zen master who's integrally informed and has an overview of a theory of everything that humans have ever experienced and can potentially experience. That's integral overview. We have practices, not only practices from traditional Zen that really have fine-tuned the art of awakening, but we also have psychological and cultural practices that we've taken from modernity and post-modernity. We have a powerful package of practices to do deep psychospiritual work, not leaving out one or the other. So we have a Roshi who's integral. So we have a teacher. We have practices that are powerful and work across a whole spectrum of psycho-spiritual problems. We have a rigid, solid container that is required to do such deep work. And we create that container every time we gather to work. And we have a nurturing community that provides a healing environment in which people can hold each other as we heal. These are the ingredients required, to me, for a fourth turning of Buddhism. And this foundation is all we have. And it is so powerful, as you can bear witness to. How has it impacted your life?
It's hard to even put that in words. It's been so impactful. It's that solid container I was longing for. I think that when you said those four elements, that comes first for me. That solid boundary, that safe space in which to explore, to go deep, to bring everything of me into. And it's okay, it's held, it's understood, it's accepted. And then, as you say, the teacher almost comes second for me. And if I was to put a hierarchy on these, that solid integral teacher who then holds me accountable within that boundary. The practices that support me within that boundary, and the loving Sangha that love me within that boundary. But the boundary was needed first, and the boundary I did not find in so many other spiritual communities or with so many other spiritual teachers. That was almost the foundation for me, and the rest comes
Yes.
on top.
Yes. So I want to appreciate what you said, and I just want to add to it. For you, this is true. For me, the solid container also was the most essential. But I quickly learned that one size doesn't fit all. And things change over time with changing circumstances. So although this is true for you right now, it's not true for everybody. Other people will be drawn to the loving community. They'll need the connection and the support. Other people will be drawn to the insight of a teacher because their own insight is lacking. And other people will be so drawn to the practices that are so deep and complete that they haven't been able to find them anyplace else. My own experience after experimenting for the last 15 years, as though my own life depended on it, because of course this is a personal journey for me as well. I couldn't find such a container to do the work I needed to do, so I had to create one. It was that simple. But all of these ingredients, the whole package, is what is essential and very, very rare. I can't think of another place where I could find those four ingredients in such an alignment and configuration. So at different times for different people, each one of those four are going to be primarily important. But the fact that they're all there and available and supporting people in the work is critical. It's the gestalt of this whole package that makes it so powerful, which
and
is the
makes
foundation of the fourth turning of Buddhism.
and makes it so integral because it meets everyone where they're at and can support them in the way they need to be supported. I really appreciate that clarification.
Yes.
Thank you.
it makes it dynamic and supportive completely.
Yeah.
It covers all the bases, as we would say
Yeah.
in America, with our exception of baseball.
Well, thank you so much. That's been wonderful to get some clarity on this, and I really hope it's been beneficial for anyone who's been listening, because I have,
So the real
I
question,
continue to learn. Yes, please carry on.
the real question is, how can this help you? And the only way to answer that question adequately is come see for yourself. Come join us and jump into the pool. The water's beautiful.
Thank you, Doshin.
Thank you. Swaha.
Swaha.